to the Minds on a Mission podcast, the podcast where we explore the journeys that challenge us, change us, and chart the best course for our best selves. You can find us on a lot of different streaming services. And those being we're on Facebook, Instagram, X, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spreaker, Amazon Music / Audible, iHeartRadio, Podbean, and Buzzsprout. I believe that's all of them. I'm your host, Samantha Bailey, an entrepreneur and a content creator. And today's guest is the wonderful William Blake. Say hi, everybody. I know that part's always I was like, I wish I had sound effects. It just was like, brr, brr, brr.
Just like boom, boom, fireworks going off. Wah!
Yes, I need to because I'm like, I just like amp it up. I love like the intros and it just being like high energy. But then when it gets to the introducing, I'm like, it's just that awkward air. I'm like, I need sound effects for this part. That would just like bring it all in.
Just be like Alexa in the background being like, blast the podcast music.
Yes, seriously. I need something. I think that will be something that will come in the future because the intros, I feel like I got a good rhythm with it, but then it's the introduce part. I'm like, I need something to just match the vibe, in that first part because it's like all these guests, everybody is super special to me, and like I just want that energy to be reciprocated. So how are you doing today?
Oh, so good. So good. Just dandy, as I said before. But it's such a great day. So.
That's good. I love it. So my favorite thing to do is at the beginning just to have my guests just explain a little bit about themselves for anyone who may not know you.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm William Blake. I am the Dyslexic Achievement Coach. I'm best-selling author, award-winning speaker, and just someone who loves helping other people bring light into their lives and helping dyslexics find their superpower. So since I was in first grade when I was first diagnosed, throughout my entire life, everyone told me that dyslexia was this challenge, something that I would never overcome, and that would just be a hurdle I have to deal with the rest, like my entire life. Till about halfway through college, I finally had these questions come up and being like, is it really a challenge? Like, is it, even though I dealt with so much in high school and having to get accommodations with teachers, and while my friends were in honors classes, I felt left behind. But the questions kept coming up like, what if I could do more? I wanted to be an author. I wanted to be a speaker. I want to be a teacher. And so I just simply started doing that. And I found that through my dyslexia, sure, there's some hard things and some difficult things with it, but like we have greater perspective. We're able to problem solve more. Being creative is just innate within us, and more empathy simply because we've been through a lot. And so from that, I've been able to take that, put out my own books, go out on stage and teach other people that there's so much more in life than just the challenges that we face and sit on, that as we go forward with them, it's our edge, it's our superpower. So I created that into a dyslexic coaching business and continue to speak with that type of things on stage.
That's awesome. And there's a lot I want to unpack there, but I want to kind of start with like the beginning. What was your childhood like? And can you kind of explain what dyslexia is and what life was like growing up being dyslexic?
Absolutely. Dyslexia, how I put it in terms, is it falls into 4 different areas. You have reading, writing, speaking, and spelling. So dyslexia breaks into dys, which is difficult in the origin word, and then lexia, which is reading. And that also trickles down into the spelling, the writing, and the speaking part. So it's those 4 areas. And depending on the person, depends on the severity of it. For me, it was the reading, writing, and speaking part. Reading, I read so slow. So slow. Like when other people would finish a book in like a couple days, it took me a month, 2 months to be able to finish that same book. Talking out loud in class, I was always that kid that just said pass, that would be so conservative. Not because I didn't want to read, but because I was embarrassed when I did, because it was so slow. And then writing, it was slow writing. So throughout elementary school, I was the not the difficult kid, the different kid, because people elementary school kids, they're just learning, they're like 7, 8 years old, and so they're just picking up on like what exactly is going on. So a lot of people that I was friends with in elementary school thought dyslexia was contagious and thought I had the thing like cooties, which for everyone who's listening, dyslexia is not contagious, fully genetic.
Right.
School that happened, and through middle school it was lonely, and I got bullied a little bit. And in high school, even though I had accommodations and even though I went through the process of tutoring and stuff to help minimize the weakness so-called that I had, it everyone was in honors classes, and I felt I was so smart because I was still great at math. I was still great at being able to have information laid out on paper and present it, in the form of not presenting in front of the class because that was still difficult, but in like my homework assignment, I'd get 100% on a lot of them, but still I wasn't in honors classes simply because I couldn't keep up with the uh, curriculum that they were having. So it was I'd say difficult through that, feeling like I wasn't living my own story, felt like I was a side character in many people's stories, and then I was just trying to really get through school rather than enjoying it. And so through just like those beginning stages, I'll keep it to that because I can go on forever about this. Just though those beginning stages, it was hard. It was hard to think that because of something I had no control over, that it was going to control the rest of my life.
That I resonate with that, and I feel like a lot of people will. Obviously, probably in different ways. I know, for me, I felt similar, but just kind of more like I kind of struggled with really bad acne, and kind of just had certain things that I was kind of insecure about, and I always felt similar where I felt like a lot of people kind of treated me different and kind of felt like lesser than in certain situations. And again, too, over things that I could not control. I mean, acne, anybody can have it, and it's based on various things, diet, your hormones. And so I definitely relate with that. And you said, correct me if I'm wrong, you went to speech therapy?
It wasn't speech therapy. It
Like,
was
uh,
yeah, it was tutoring.
uh,
So every
sorry.
like Friday after school, we'd go to I don't think they're a private tutor, just like a company that tutored kids with dyslexia. Go there for like an hour and a half, to do word puzzles, play games on computers that have to deal with words and things like that.
Okay. Sorry about that. I just with all the stuff, I just wanna make sure that I was I heard that part, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Got
for
that
sure.
part. Yeah, I didn't have tutoring, but I would, like, stay after a lot because I felt like too I mean, I don't have dyslexia, but I felt like in certain ways, I needed extra help for certain things a lot. Like, I would have to stay after a lot, um, and just kind of it didn't feel as effortless for me as, like, it probably would for others. I've always felt like in certain things I had to put in more work to achieve the same results. Um, and that's just more so too, like, for me, I've always been a person where certain things I kind of need, like, broken down more to, like, understand it, but then, once I've gone down, like, I could pick up on it, but it's just kind of needing that extra explanation. But oh,
If I can, that reminds me of a little analogy I love to teach people when it comes to it. It could be dyslexia because that's what I mainly focus on. But people who have ADHD, people who are autistic, people who are like have really any mental disability or disorder, is that imagine yourself if you're going from your house to Walmart. Most people can just take the direct route from point A to point B. Individuals who have learning disorders or learning disabilities, our road from point A to point B is filled with construction. It is full of traffic. it's almost impossible for us to go that normal way. And so we need to find this route C. We need to find this other way that goes around, might take a little bit longer, maybe a little bit more scenic, but we always get to the end result. So I absolutely resonate with that. When it takes a little bit longer to get something, it's okay because we get the same result. That's what happens when we're learning something new, right? Whenever we're learning something new, we're trying to learn from that the learning curve. When we start out, we know jack squat. But as we learn more, we understand the jargon, we understand the different meticulous things that go into it. To then, once we get experience behind our belt, then are able to get that result that we're wanting. So I that was an analogy that came straight to my head, that I hope relates to that thing that you were saying, and hopefully to the audience that was listening.
I love that analogy. And I think that's a really good way to explain it. And two, it's like when you're someone who kind of learns that way, like how I was, it kind of again is another thing where it almost makes you feel lesser than, because it's like, oh, why am I not picking up on this as quick as other people? But like you said too, it's like I know I'll get there. It just might take me a little longer. But you know, like I said, it's just more of like I'm more someone that needs it like all laid out, and then kind of then I can like piece it together. But it kind of takes a little longer. But so I I had another thought too. So you said you did tutoring. I've never had tutoring, but I did have speech therapy. And I kind of was wondering what your thoughts on it, because I've kind of noticed that it almost feels like something that sometimes people are ashamed of, like speech therapy as a whole. And I kind of was wondering if that's something maybe you've noticed as well, or your thoughts on it, like why that might be. And same for like tutoring and stuff. I feel like some people almost are afraid to get the extra help because it might to them it's like, oh, it might make me look dumb, or so I kind of was wondering your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think you nailed it right on the button. It's the thought of what other people are going to think about you, right? There's the stereotypical thing of therapy is bad in the world. And I know several people who are trying to break that stigma, but therapy is simply going to a third party individual who knows what they're talking about to then help you on a certain thing. Some people call it therapy, other people call it coaching, right? It just depends on how you look at it. So I have 3 kids, and my middle child, we were doing speech therapy for her. And for the last year, we've done it, and we've seen an incredible amount of words come from her, to where she was behind, and now she's at the level or slightly ahead of the kids that are her age. When I remember during that year, when we go out and talk to people, even I, like someone who tries to break those stigmas, even I felt kind of self-conscious about sharing, yeah, my kid's in speech therapy. Why? Because she doesn't speak words, right? That doesn't make her lesser than, that doesn't make her anything that is going to be a bad thing in this world. No, she is a human being who, in a single skill set, is just having a little bit trouble in. So I think that's what kind of the stigma is with it, is that therapy seems to be bad, whether it's speech, whether it's couples counseling, whether it's therapy for a single individual, as well as tutoring sessions, just that judgment from other people. And so to fix it, you come down to yourself about how can I fix it? And then hopefully other people around the world are helping other people's mindsets. But I think that's what it comes down to, is just the judgment from other people.
I appreciate your thoughts on that, because I that's something I kind of thought about more so recently, because that that subject has come up a little bit. One of my last guests, he um I'm pretty sure he's a speech therapist. Yeah. And so that was kind of something we were talking about, but that was a question I was thinking too, because although you're not in speech therapy, having dyslexia, like that is in the realm. And kind of, you know, was curious what you were thinking on that. And it reminded me of an instance. I used to work at a daycare. I just switched jobs, but um
Okay.
before I had left, I had a parent who was concerned about their child because their child was like 3 years old and was still struggling with speaking. And I kind of told her, I was like, I personally, when I was younger, I had speech therapy. It may not be for everyone, but I don't think it's something to be ashamed about, because it's like, if you're noticing that he's having some struggles, like, this would really be beneficial for him. And so I kind of was thinking that, because I felt like it was similar, where she kind of was concerned, like, you know, about putting him in speech therapy, and if it was normal. And I was like, I think it is normal to for kids to be put into speech therapy and to have some struggles with speech, especially early on. So that was just something I kind of was thinking about.
Yeah, and it's the best time to catch it, right? If a parent is of fear about the judgment from other people, then the best time to fix it is when the kid's young. Because what if you leaned into that fear? If you leaned into it, then you wouldn't be doing it. And then your kid would hopefully get better, but might get worse. And so if the kid happened to get worse, then there would be even more judgment from more people. So it's kind of like I don't think hindsight 2020 is the right phrase, but maybe it is. It's like, do you want to fix it now when not many people are looking and it's easier to fix, or do you want to fix it later when more people might be watching and it might be harder or almost impossible to be able to fix?
I agree. And I feel like that's the case with, like, pretty much everything. Is like, it's better to catch something early on than when it's too late, you know. And it's not like anything's ever too late, but it's just things progress, and that's, and sometimes it's like, if you notice something, like you said, it's like your best bet is to take care of it while it is still early on. Um, so I agree with that. And so I was thinking, since we're kind of talked a little bit about childhood, can you kind of walk me through um, life afterwards, and kind of what led you to being a dyslexic achievement coach? Because how old are you?
I am 28.
Okay, so there's 28 years of life experience there, and I would love to know, kind of leading up to this, and maybe some things that you've done along the way, different jobs, and just kind of what led you to what you do now.
I love that question. What led me to where I'm at now? So I went through the stages of elementary school and high school. It was about middle of college to where I was questioning it, being like, what if I can do more? What if I can go forward with it? What started me on that journey was I came across this statistic. It said 95% of CEOs read 50 or more books a year. Wasn't motivational, but I thought it would be pretty cool to be a CEO. It would be pretty cool to be like a business owner. And so I grabbed, I don't know if kids still have them these days, but like those little note cards that you had back in school, to where the professors or the teacher would be like, "Okay, you can put all your notes on this one note card, and this is all you can take to your test." And everyone would write in the tiniest handwriting all their notes on there to get as much information as they can. I put the numbers 1 through 12 on one of these note cards because I wanted to read 12 books. For someone who read maybe one book a year before that,
One of these?
I thought, exactly, yes, those.
Oh god.
Look at you. Look at you prepared. Didn't even know it. The amazing thing is, the as I thought how great it would be to just read a book a month. Just one book a month. It didn't seem that hard. And so I wrote 1 through 12, went over, there we go, I'm going pink again. Went over to my bookshelf, grabbed the smallest book that I had, which was Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Opened the book and started reading chapter 1. And so from there, I went and I read the 12 books, which then went to 40 and then 50 books, and then continually 60 books a year since then. Which then, after, as it continued, I'm like, what if I could do more? Which then started leading me to start speaking about what I was learning. So I started doing things on social media. I contacted my family and friends, being like, hey, is there opportunities for me to speak? My sister in law let me speak to her fifth grade class, had it several times. So amazing to speak to those fifth graders, wonderful minds. One of my college professors let me speak to his business presentations class, and that was a great opportunity. And it was like the snowball effect from that point. You mentioned jobs. The first job I had was with landscaping. So going out and mowing lawns and aerating and all that fun stuff. Then after that, I worked at Walmart in the produce section. Then led me to my wife and I moving up to Idaho, to where, while I was up there for a year, became a property manager for 112 apartments. After that, went back down here to Utah where I'm at, went back to Walmart produce section just so I had something coming while I was figuring something else out and doing all of this in the background. And then had an apprenticeship as a sales rep for a company. And just the small little movements as I went forward led me to different mentors that I had. My boss up in Idaho with the property management was a great mentor. One of my good friends, John Kovac, who's down here, fantabulous mentor. And it was from just going out, being exposed to the job and experience and getting all that in, that just led me to, I'm good at teaching. I'm good at listening to other individuals and giving third party advice. I'm fantastic at being able to adapt to situations that I'm in and put a turn on it to where I can make it feel like it's my home, so I can be comfortable in what I'm saying. And so these strengths that I was starting to gather from other people and from realizing in myself just kind of led me to, I've been dyslexic for almost 3 decades now. I know how much of a struggle it was in the beginning. I don't want people to have that same struggle, or at least go through that struggle, but at least have a support system while they go through it. And so that's kind of what made me become the dyslexic achievement coach, because I wanted to help dyslexics, but I didn't just want to give them information. I didn't want to just diagnose them with what was going on. After they got their diagnosis and after they got the information, I wanted them to take the next step forward in what they're doing. I wanted them to actually achieve something. So whether that's becoming an author or a teacher, getting a promotion at your job, being able to start your own business, whether that's simply starting a family or learning how to read, or whatever goal or dream or vision that the individual had, I simply wanted to help them achieve it. And I wanted to give them the tools and resources that helped me achieve what I did, and that could hopefully help them achieve that same thing. So all that wrapped around into a big bundle of, that's kind of what started me into what I'm doing right now with speaking and coaching, is to help bring that light into the darkness that people unfortunately feel every single day.
That's awesome. Sorry, I saw there was a comment just left. Thank you. I'm pretty sure that's my friend Haley. Haley, thank you for watching. Love you. Thank you for the comment. She said, "Great content. Keep it up." William's doing a great job. So yes,
What a good friend. What a
yeah.
good friend.
I saw it. I was normally I don't get live comments, so I was like, oh, someone left a comment, and I saw the name. I'm like, that's my friend Haley.
Heck yeah.
I've got a lot of thoughts on what you just unpacked, so bear with me while I try to gather all those thoughts.
Absolutely.
I have not been diagnosed, but I definitely think I am ADHD. I have a lot of the traits of ADHD, so I get kind of squirrel brain, and I'm just like I feel like what are they called? The machine, pinball machine, is that what it's called? Where the
Yeah,
thing,
the pinball machine, the
yes,
yeah.
that's how I feel like my brain is a lot of times. Just like so trying to think back, I had so many thoughts. I wish I had like, I don't know, a thing to automatic like just read my brain and like write it out on
You're
a
good.
thing.
Yeah, let's just do it this way. First thought that comes to your mind, let's roll with it.
Okay. So I was trying to think. Rich Dad Poor Dad. That was the first thing I was thinking about. You mentioned that. It's crazy. I feel like I've talked to a lot of people about this book. Don't just say nothing, but I've never actually read it. Here's my one comment though. I've known about this book for quite some time, and I need to read it, but I've watched his videos. He's got videos on YouTube if anyone's interested, and maybe you're like, I don't know if I'm ready to read the whole book. He does talk about what is within the book, as well as the cash flow quadrant, which I know is another big thing that is mentioned. Um, I believe. I don't know if it's in the book, but that's one of his big things as well. Robert Kiyosaki is the cash flow quadrant, where he talks about the different mindsets, like being I'm gonna pull it up actually so that but do you know what I'm talking about? Have you seen the cash flow quadrant? I'm assuming you have.
I have. I don't remember specifically like the different technical things
Right.
with it, but yes, I have.
So there's four parts of the cash flow quadrant, and so
Oh, is that
there's the
the like investor, business owner, that one you're
yes,
talking about?
yes, yes. So it's
Yeah.
the employee, you have a job, business owner, you own a system, you self-employed, you own a job, or investor, you make money works for you. So that is um the extent of what I know about, but yes, recommend to any of you guys at least check out his videos on it that he talks about it. So I do know the premise of the book, but I've read quite a bit of books the end of last year, and only a couple of this year I'm lacking, but that is on my to read list. Definitely recommend. So that was the first thing I thought because I know you mentioned that. And
Yeah.
then I definitely agree with the
And while you're thinking, if I could recommend a few other books for people
yes.
who are listening, um, three of my favorite books. So these are my top three. And for someone who's read over 300 self development books in the last 6 years, these top three are my favorite. So the first one is The One Thing by Gary Keller, where you're able to focus on a single thing. Second one is a little bit newer, last couple of years. 10x is easier than 2x. How to achieve more by doing less. Absolute favorite. And that's by Dan Sullivan. And then the third one is Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. If you want a perspective breaker and just like want your mind blown about things and how they are in the world, that would be a fantastic book to read. So those are my top three books that highly recommend for individuals who are wanting something to start reading.
Yes. And I'm looking over because I actually put I made a list of books I read last year. Oh, okay. I thought you were camera mode. I was like, oh. The first one you mentioned, I read The One Thing. That was one of the books I read last year. So yes, I agree. I had heard of the second book, the 10x one, and the third one, actually I've never heard about, but I know who Napoleon Hill is, so that's gonna be another one I'm gonna add to my list.
Awesome. Yeah, if anyone's heard of Think and Grow Rich, that's the author of it, Napoleon
Yeah.
Hill.
And to kind of add to that, I guess I'll do my top three, but I have not read nearly as many books. I need to catch up with you. I don't know if I ever will, though. You seem like you love reading books.
I love reading books, and I'll share. I want to hear your top three, and then I'll tell you a little hack on for individuals who want to read books faster, if I may. So share your top three. I'd love to hear them.
Honestly, that's hard, and I don't know how you were able to find your top three out of how many you've read, because I have a list of so I started, and this was more like within a couple months span, and that's why I said this year I've only read a couple, but this was for the end of the year. I read 17 books. This was from August to the end of the year, and all of them were great, but
Yeah.
it's hard to pick. Like you said, The One Thing was pretty good. Um Psycho-Cybernetics. I don't know if you've read that one. I did like that one.
I have, yes.
So honestly, I'll just read the list just because I can't pick three, but it's a quick list. If I were to read your list, it would be the rest of the show. I'd just be
Rest of the time.
yeah, it would be the rest of the time. There's so many books. That's like such an accomplishment to get all of that. Right, read all of those. And do you know within what time frame that was that you read all of them? Like how many years?
Like, yeah, it's been about 6 years, 5 or 6 years since I've read over the 300. So, like I said, it started with 50, then went to then my goal was 75, and then has kind of ranged in between 60 and 80 books every year since then.
How about this? We make a deal. I'll read the 17. You pick if you've read them all, your top three, which you probably have because they're really good ones.
Yeah.
Psycho-Cybernetics, the Four Agreements. That one was a really good one. I really did like that one. The Untethered Soul, A Happy Pocket Full of Money, Conscious Creator, which is actually a Chris Crone book. The One Thing, Mindset, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, Never Get a Real Job, um, YNAB, which is You Need a Budget. I don't know if you've heard of that app or like that. I don't know what else to do, but it's like a budgeting thing. But it's called The Proven Cycle for Breaking the Paycheck to Paycheck. No Excuses. That was a pretty good one. 12 Rules for Life, How to Talk to Anyone, 7 Spiritual Laws of Success, How to Read People Like a Book, Breaking Overthinking, and The Power of Positive Thinking. Those were all books I read.
Mm. Oh, those are there's some great books in there. Everyone who's listening, you should read all of those books that are in there because that's a great list.
That's what I
If
meant.
I
How
were to
about you?
pick top, yeah, if I were to pick top three, goodness, there's so many in there. I would go with The Four Agreements, fantastic book. I'd also go with No Excuses. That'd be another one. And then the third one, you're making me pick. I'd go with Mindset. And I assume that's one is by Carol Dweck, if I'm thinking of the right one.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is a
That'd
good
be my
lineup.
three.
And honestly, I feel like The Four Agreements probably would be my number one on that list because I do feel like out of all the books that I had read, that one was the most memorable to me.
Mm.
In the sense of like things that I feel like I would live by in my life. And sometimes I'll just think about stuff within that book, which the other ones I kind of have a hard time remembering certain things as much as I do with that one because I really did like that book. So I do agree.
Yeah.
Can you
With those books, I would just recommend, like, if a book resonates with you, let it resonate with you. And more importantly, like, figure out why. Take some action on it. I know some of my top 3 favorite books, all 3 of them are perspective changers because I love talking about stuff that breaks out of what I consider normal because it just brings in more stories, brings in more perspectives, and I get so excited and so curious about it. So like that's why my top 3 are that. With the Four Agreements for you and for whatever other books that other people have on their list, like why does it resonate with you? And then go out and find more books like that because there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of books out there. It's just finding the right ones that help you do with whatever you're wanting to do in your life.
Yeah, and mine was like so I have a couple good ways of like finding recommendations, and also I'll just pop this on here real quick. Someone said, "Can you write down all of the book recommendations?" So I'm not sure. You said you're watching this through LinkedIn. So if you could find my Facebook, which is Samantha Bailey, I actually have my link tree on there, which has all of the books that I have read, and I will also list your top 3 picks and whatever other ones I feel like would be good to put on there as well. So I could definitely add to that, and you should definitely check that out because I believe that has all of the books that I have read. And I've tried to find like the PDFs and stuff for it just to give out the free resources. So definitely recommend.
And if I
Um,
may, a great thing that we can also do is on LinkedIn or wherever you're streaming on this, in the comment section after this live is done, we can just go in there and write the books that are in there. That way people also have it who watch it later. And I'll go ahead into the different lives that we have. I'll put my top 3, and I'll even do a little more. If I can give a gift to your audience, I'll write my top 10 books in there that people can be able to read.
that would be awesome, and I think they would appreciate that a lot. And I have another one. My friend Haley said her top 3 are Rich Dad Poor Dad, Change Your Paradigm, Change Your Life, and Millionaire Success Habits.
Good books. Yes.
I see. I have not read those, but adding to the list. I honestly have a really long list, and it gets overwhelming. But just gotta break down. Just break it down. Don't make it.
Just one day at a time. Like how do you? It's Brian Tracy. Eat that frog. It's about just every day being consistent with the small actions to then get to where you need to go. If I may, can I share a principle with you that I teach my dyslexic clients?
Of course, we would love to hear.
I call it the 2% rule. And this doesn't apply just for individuals who have dyslexia. This applies for anyone who is wanting to achieve a goal. The 2% rule is taking 2% action every single day to get to the goal that you want. So we start out with what goal you're wanting. This is your dream, your vision, that finish line, that northern star that you're wanting to go towards. What's that for you? Once you have that, you reverse engineer it backwards. So you start at the end and work your way back. Just like how if you were to go to a restaurant and on those kids menus that has the mazes, I never go from start to finish. I always visualize going from the finish line back. So when I finally put crayon to paper, I can do it flawlessly. That's what we got to do with our goals. We start at the end and then work backwards. And then that sets the milestones and the blueprint to then be able to go forward with the plan. So with the 2% rule, it's just figuring out 2% of something that you need to do today to be able to work towards it. Because as you add those two upon 2%, upon 2%, then you eventually get to your goal and surpass your goal. Now, some people come back at me and it's just like, well, Willie, why not focus on 100%, or why not focus on the 1%? Well, if you focus on the 100%, you hit what's called analysis paralysis. This is where you feel overwhelmed by everything that's going on and you just don't take action because you don't know what the first step you need to take is. On the flip side, if you just focus on 1%, it doesn't get a fire under you and it doesn't get you out of your comfort zone. And that's why I love the 2%, because it's big enough to get that fire, to get that passion to go and get what you want, but then also small enough to where you're not overwhelmed by the big plate of stuff that you have to do. And so that's really what it comes down to, is with your list of big books, and for whoever else is listening, whatever your big to-do list or things are, just one thing at a time, one thing, Gary Keller, one thing at a time to then get to where you want to go. 2% action every single day that will help you get to your goal.
I had a couple thoughts on that. I'll save my favorite thought for the last. But cuz you said one thing and it's like Marianne says when, well, I don't know if she still says it, but when I went to the Chris Crone event, which I want to talk about that, but we'll give that a minute. But the golden nuggets where you hear something, you're like, it just sends off like fireworks and stuff in your brain. You're like, oh my
God. Yeah.
So I had that, and that's why I said I'm gonna save that one for the last, because you just blew my brain, but or my mind. So yes, I agree with that, especially too with starting at the end and then going backwards. It's like if you don't know what your end goal is, how are you gonna know how you're gonna achieve that? So I very much agree with that, because it's like a lot of people, and I too struggle with that, where it's like I'm very much like I struggle with thinking I need to be 100% in and everything, and I have to do so many things at once instead of breaking it down. And that's really something I've been working on recently. Is kind of, because like SMART goals, I feel like the goals I had were not SMART goals because it has to be one of the attainable. They were not attainable goals, but I'm very much someone who is like, oh, like I have to, and having to slow down and remind myself, like, you can't go from 0 to 100 like that. Like if like the example I gave on the last time I talked about this was like one of my goals was to work out 5 times a week. Well, currently I work out this many times a week, zero. So your body, especially too, and your mind, how can you go from not working out at all to 5 times a week just instantly? That's just kind of for myself. It was unrealistic expectations I had of myself, and thinking that like, oh, I just have to go on and just do it and just, you know what I mean? And it just wouldn't stick because again, I'm going from not working out at all to 5 days a week. So just like you said, having to break it down and make it into smaller steps doesn't mean, you know, sell yourself short and kind of choose things that are like, oh, like easy, but set goals that you're like, I know I could pass this and this is attainable for what I could do right now. So say like I want to do 2 days a week. It's like I know I could do 2 days a week, but if I do five, I at least did two. But if you just do two, you're like, okay, I hit my goal. You know what I mean? So that's very much like how I've kind of had to break it down to myself and remind myself, like, you don't need to do that. You don't have to think you have to be, and that doesn't mean don't put in a lot of effort into everything you do. It just means that create smart goals, goals that are attainable for where you're at right now, and then increase.
Yeah. Gary V does a wonderful job with this. He used to back in the between 2010 and 2020, he was big on do the grind, do the hustle and everything. And now he's kind of flipped it as he's had more experience in realizing it. But something he says is micro speed, macro patience. So macro patience is the big thing, the big hairy audacious goal that you're aiming towards. We need to be patient. We need to learn how to be patient. That's going to come, but we got to wait. It's not going to just jump in front of us and we're just all of a sudden going to get millions of dollars and the business we want and get the followers, million followers, if that's a goal of yours. We're not going to get that right away. But it's like be patient with the macro. But in the micro, do the consistent things that are going to get you there. If it's followers, engagement, posting quality videos, posting every single day with shorts and stuff, like those will help you get there. For someone who's wanting to read a lot of books, it's set a timer, read for 15 minutes. It doesn't matter how long it takes, but or how many pages you read 15 minutes or read 10 pages. Because I'll tell you this for anyone who's reading, and then I'd love to hear that awesome thought of yours. If you're wanting to read 12 books in a year, I'll break down the math for you. If you read 10 pages a day, every single day, you'll hit 300 pages in a month. The average self-help book has 300 pages in it. So you can finish one book if you read 10 pages a day in a month. There are 12 months in a year. So if you read 300 pages in a month, which is one book, 12 books, and do it every month, then by the end of the year, after the 12 months, you're going to hit 12 books. So if you're wanting to read more and hit 12 books in a year, it's really not that hard. 10 pages a day for some people takes minutes. For people like myself, it might take a lot longer, but 10 pages a day is not that big of a thing. But because of it, the simple compounding effect, it's not just for financial stuff, the compounding effect with it then helps you get to your goal, right? 2% action every day.
I agree. Um, Everything you've shared tonight has been very impactful. I really appreciate everything. And I know that's why we talked about it a little bit before we got on, but like when I realized that you were within the same space as Marianne, I got really excited because I was like, you know, anyone that I've seen be in her circle and be around her, and I'm just like, I know that all of these people are also very powerful and impactful and have a lot going for them because it's like the way she carries herself. And that's why I said when I'd seen her, I immediately was like the energy, I was drawn to it, I loved it. And then when she speaks, the power that she has when she speaks is just like, it's something else. But before we talk a little bit about that, because I did want to kind of know um, how you kind of found out who Marianne was and how you guys got in touch and everything with that. I'll talk about the little golden nugget that I had when you were sharing before
Yeah.
was I've never heard anyone else say analysis paralysis. That is something
Mm.
that I've talked about a couple times, and I've never heard anyone else use that term. And so when you said that, it just was like ding 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 ding. I was like, because I was like, that's something that I talked about a little bit and how I've struggled with analysis paralysis. And that can be a big thing that kind of stops you from making decisions is being stuck in that state and kind of just being overwhelmed. And so when you said that, I just was like, just
Yeah.
like, wow. And is that something kind of you share with your clients as well? And I just was curious about that. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I share that with my clients. I share that with individuals during the speeches that I do. That's part of my keynote speech. It's just an integral part when it comes to taking action. Is that we get sometimes we feel overloaded that we can't move a step, and so being able to find a way to pass that is absolutely crucial. And so I don't know exactly when I found it or who I heard it from, but when I heard it, I'm like, yes, that's exactly how I feel. I feel overwhelmed by everything. I am analyzing so much and I just feel paralyzed because of it. And it was just like a two-word rhyming type thing that just fit this whole description of everything. And I'm like, yes, that's the wording I'm going to use for when I'm talking about action and how to be consistent and how to keep it small, because that's how I felt. And I'm sure I'm not the only person that feels that way.
yes, and same thing for me. I'm not sure if I heard it somewhere or something, but I just kind of was like, I don't know, like same thing you said. It's like I just was like, this is perfect to describe how I feel when I get in those moments where because I kind of feel like I go through like ebbs and flows where I feel like I'll be doing really good and then I'll be stuck in that analysis paralysis and kind of just like consumed and everything and it like stresses me out. And then kind of it's like a roller coaster. Like I'm just back and forth like going through that. And so it's something I'm really trying to work on, which is why I'm setting the smaller smart goals instead of thinking I need to be so big because I think that also contribute wow, I can't speak, contributed to it is looking at it as a whole and just kind of being like, how do I get there? And then like kind of playing it out, but still being like, just this feels like a lot, or and thinking, oh, I need to do so much at such a time. You know what I mean? And just realizing like it may take a little longer by having smaller goals now, but it will bring me to where it doesn't matter how long it'll take. It just matters, like you said, that I'm taking consistent action and, at least putting that 2% every day. So I really agree with that.
And
And
if I could deter from one thing that you said, there's one thing I don't agree with you on what you said. And that's the part of it might take a little bit longer, but taking small, consistent action makes you get there. I am going to fight for the side of if you try to make it too big, you are going to fall on your face. And that it is through the consistent action that you take,
right.
whether it's small or massive, whatever you are able to handle with your skill level and your expertise, that's going to get you there the fastest. So many times we come up with these quick schemes or making fast money or whatever it is, and we think it's just going to fix the problem. Well, it doesn't, because we are the commonality between all the problems that we've had in our life. And so as we fix ourselves, and it's not really fixing ourselves, but as we continue to work on ourselves, that's going to help us get to where we need to go, whatever path that is for us. So, not disagreeing with much of what you said. It was just that simple line and this mindset shift I want to make for the people who are listening, of which we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen if we do something super big and whatnot. But most of the time, in my experience, when I try to do things fast and do things out of order, I fall on my face, I sit in a corner, and I cry about it. But the times that I actually get action, that I provide the most value for individuals, those are the things that I'm consistent with. Those are the things that, like, as Marianne says, like, this is me. Like, this is me. And for those people who are listening, you are you. And so it's your path and it's your journey. We got to be patient with the timing with it because we don't know when it's going to happen. But it's going to happen as we continue to be consistent with it.
Right. I do agree with that. That makes sense. Yeah, and I guess too, yeah, that could be like kind of a mindset I've had of like thinking that it would take longer, but I get what you're saying. Um
And
and
don't beat yourself up with it, with changing mindset. That's why I love changing perspectives. Goodness gracious, I'm wrong every single day. And I love it because it means that I'm moving forward. I was talking with my friend today, failing forward and failing fast, because it's the failures that put the milestones to be able to get to the success. It's not just us simply walking, it's those failures. And I only use the word fail. I hate the word failure. It's out of my vocabulary unless it's in a teaching lesson, because it's either success or lessons, not success and failure. But it's those stepping stones of when we learn and when we continue to fail forward that we're able to then get to the success. So I wouldn't beat yourself up about it, because we're just all learning. We're all humans. We're all trying to learn in this vast universe that we have, just like what truth is or what's going to work for us. That's what it comes down to. It's like, what works for us? Everything that I've said today could be wrong, right? It's the things that have worked for me, but I know that they've worked for me, and hopefully sharing them, they can work for someone else.
I agree. Yeah, and with like I mentioned a little bit, but I had a new um a job switch like position, and I was working in daycare, but now I work at a credit union. And so I've been having that so much of like failing, but obviously it's not failing, it's learning, but just when you start something new and you're really trying to grow, it's like you're failing a lot and making mistakes. And so it definitely gets like kind of overwhelming, but like so like I always get through like where I have those moments like I'm like, oh, I feel like I did something wrong, or like I keep making mistakes. It's just kind of telling myself like, oh well, you gotta just keep trying and do it again, and kind of because I very much used to kind of get wrapped up in it and feel very overwhelmed. It felt like one thing would just was like a big thing, It's like a smaller mistake, but it's just you're just learning lessons. But it used to like kind of stress me out and make me feel overwhelmed. I feel like, and so I'm just kind of like you said, trying to push past that and just continue to make the mistakes, because if I don't, then I'll never learn what, you know what I mean? So, um I definitely agree with like failing. Again, I don't like that word either. Failing, it just sounds wrong. But making mistakes a lot and fast and recovering from it and just keep, you know what I mean? Cuz like I said, you'll never learn if you don't make the mistakes. So,
Yeah, it's true. One of my favorite quotes, if I can share it before we go on, is the master is the master because the master has failed more than the novice has tried. Which means we just need to keep trying and we just need to keep failing forward, because that's how the master is the master. It's not because the master had innate talent that they just became this super individual in a certain thing. It's because they've tried so many times and fallen so many times, but every time they fell, they got back up. And because they kept doing that, they have failed more than the novice has tried. So just anything that with your audience who's listening, anything you're doing, keep trying. Keep working at it, because you're eventually going to get there. Just keep trying. If you love it, it's worth doing.
I agree. And that's a great message to share. And yeah. I mean, if any for whoever's listening, like especially like when you start something new, um it's gonna feel like a lot and it's gonna feel really stressful and you're gonna feel like, and I've kind of had those thoughts too. It's like, why am I making so many mistakes and stuff? But then you just have to kind of remind yourself that like you're going to get there. Like, and something I mentioned too in one of my last episodes was we're not programmed with this knowledge when we're born. It's something like you said where you kind of have to just keep working at something, and it's at first it's really going to feel, you're going to have all those thoughts of like, why am I not doing good, why am I not picking up at this as fast as like I should be, and having all those things. But then when you really start to understand what you're learning and kind of just sit back and like be appreciative for the mistakes you've made, um and you grew from it, then it will just really start to feel like, okay, like now I know what I'm doing, I feel better. And but it's always that first part where it's really stressful, and you have good intentions and you just don't want to upset anybody or let anyone down, but it's like kind of get past that. People expect you to make mistakes, like you said. We're human, we know that's going to happen. It's to be expected, so don't stress out. Just keep trying. You got this.
Yeah, just keep trying. You got this. You got two people sitting right here talking who are supporting you. So at least that's two more people. And hopefully you're supporting yourself. So that's three. So you got three people behind your back for those listening as you're going towards your goal. So go at it.
Yes, you'll never know unless you try. Um, well, I was gonna mention something, but I know we're kind of nearing the end. But I was just gonna say, when I first thought about starting this podcast, I had those thoughts of like, what if it doesn't work out? What if no one listens to it? Like all those things. But I did it anyways. My favorite thing to say is when you have those thoughts, take them and throw them out the window. That's my favorite thing to say because that's really just what you need to do. Just take them and say, I don't care if you're telling me to run away and all these thoughts. I'm not going to listen to you. Because the greatest thing to think about, which I've had to work on, is what if it does work out? What if you do get to where you were, which you will? But if you want to have the what if statements of what if it doesn't, what if it does? And that's a great way to try to start thinking, because it's like, okay, it's so easy to think of the negative, but what if it does work out? And that's a great question to ask yourself, and think of all the positive things that could happen. And then, say, oh, I have all these negatives. And like I said, just say, oh, I don't care about you. Just throw it out the window. Say bye.
A great question to add on to that is, how big would you dream if you knew it would be possible? Like, how big would you dream? Because I'm impossible, split up that word, because it's I'm possible. We are possible. The things you are wanting are possible. And so why limit yourself with how big you dream? Why limit yourself with how audacious your goals are? Dream big, get that motivation about what you're aiming towards, and then start walking towards it. You might have to sacrifice some things. There might be some habits that you have that you might need to drop on the wayside. There might be some friends who are toxic and negative that you got to spend less time with, and positive friends who you got to spend more time with. But in my experience, the sacrifice is worth it. I was scared of losing my old life until I dreamed myself and daydreamed and really visualized myself into realizing this new life is so much better. My high school self didn't know how great it was going to be, and myself right now doesn't know how great in the future it's going to be. So for those who are really struggling with wondering if it's possible, it is. And you are the only limiter on your dreams. So dream big.
That was awesome. I love when we get to the parts of my episodes where we're just sharing knowledge and it's inspirational and we're just spreading positivity, because it's sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to see the positives and see, what you can accomplish in life. So I really appreciate everything that you've shared tonight. and just coming on and letting us get to know you and about what you've accomplished in your life and where you're at now. So I really appreciate that. I know we're kind of about to hit the hour mark, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. But for anyone who may be wondering, if you could just kind of let us know where they could find you.
Absolutely. And with sharing that, can I share one last thing I forgot to share earlier?
Of course.
Awesome. The last thing I forgot to share earlier, I mentioned that I was going to give a tip about how to read faster, especially
Oh,
if you're a dyslexic. Here's the thing. A book is a book. Does not matter if it's digital or on paper. I listen to books more than I read books. I still read books, different feeling of having the book right there, turning of the page and everything. But most of the books I have gone through, I've been able to listen to because I am a lot better at listening than I am reading. And that's simply like my strength that I have. And so I go onto Audible and I'm able to listen to at like 2.5 times speed. It took me 6 years to get to that point. So I would recommend for people who are starting just like 1.2 times speed. But like I able to listen to it faster and get through more books. The whole message with that is like what works for you of getting the information. Is it reading the book, just the paper book? Is it simply like reading the paper, the digital version on a Kindle? Is it listening to the book in audio form? Is it going to YouTube and watching the summary of the book because you are just love the visualization part and watching images of that? Whatever it is for the individual who's listening, it's about what works for you. If it works for you, it doesn't matter what other people say about it because it's about you. You're the hero of your own journey. You're the writer of your own story. And you're the only one that can pick up that pen of life and be able to write your chapter. So don't worry about how other people jump into the chapter you're at and start judging you for it. Simply know that you've written a whole book so far and that you are able to continue to write that book. But we get to make that conscious choice and we get to make the decisions to go forward. So I wanted to share that tip with you guys of do it on your own time. I love listening to books. That helps me go through them. If you guys love reading, if you love watching videos, do that to get the information because it's just about like growing. It's about personal development. It's about the positivity and the mind shifts that go with it. And with that, for those who want to follow me, I'm on almost all platforms, not on Pinterest. I haven't gotten there yet, but YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok. I'm on all those platforms. And you can find me at William Blake _light, LIGHT. And you can find me on all those platforms. You also can go to my website, which is williamblakelight.com. So LIGHT, same thing, williamblakelight.com. And there it'll link you to my link tree because I'm almost done with my website and that's coming soon. But until then, it'll send you to my link tree where it has all the social media links and other things going on in the Dyslexic Achievers universe.
Awesome. And I will have all of that linked as well. But I'm someone too who I also like to verbally explain things, so I just like to add that in the end just so everyone can know all the different places they can find you. And to wrap up, I will let you guys know where you can find the podcast and me if you didn't miss that in the beginning. But I did see my friend Haley, she when we were talking about mistakes, she left a quote. She said, "Yes, mistakes are must takes. Mistakes." You know what I mean?
Ooh, I like that. What a bomb. We need like a mic drop. That was so good.
But you know what?
Mistakes are must takes. I love it.
I think one thing I've gathered too through this podcast is I got to figure out sound effects. That will just, but my thing is I gotta have like one of those soundboards so I can like press it and like play stuff. You know what? That will come sometime in the near future. I'm not sure when, but makes me think that. So yes. And I had a thought earlier, but I won't go into because I know we're over. But I will leave since I didn't get to talk about it. Um different ways you can find book recommendations as well, because there are different platforms and stuff that I like to use. So I'll leave that as well. We'll also go through after this. I'm not sure if you'll have time afterwards to leave your top 3 that you said, your book recommendations.
I'd love to. Yeah.
Okay. And I will do the same, and we'll do all of that. So as for where you can find the podcast, I mentioned it earlier, but you can find us on pretty much everything. It's Facebook, Instagram, X. Um, I don't have a TikTok, but I have kind of thrown out the idea of possibly doing clips in the future, and putting those on TikTok and YouTube Shorts. And then we're on pretty much everything for streaming services like Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music / Audible, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, everything, Podbean, Deezer. It's on a lot of things. So I'll have that linked as well, and I'll have his links, and you can find me on pretty much everything. And honestly, the best way if you want to get in contact with me is on Messenger. So we thank you guys for coming on tonight and hanging out with us and getting to know more about William Blake. If you give me one moment before we wrap up, I just want to see who's our next guest. Our next guest will be Laurel Ordonez. I'm not sure if that's how you say it, but we will see you guys on Monday with Laurel. And I hope you guys have a good rest of your Friday night and enjoy your weekend. Say bye to William Blake, guys. Bye. And we'll have, imagine the sound effects. Yeah. Have a good night, guys. And we're out.